Hey everyone. Have you ever wondered how to keep a budget? Or maybe you've tried to budget in the past and it didn't really work out? If you just nodded your head, then you should stick around for this video. If you're familiar with me, then welcome back. If not, first of all, I'm not surprised. Secondly, hello. I'm Jackson. I'm a 23-year-old financial coach who's on my own journey towards financial freedom. So I started this channel and my own business money mastermind as a way to connect with and empower other young entrepreneurs like myself with the ideas of financial freedom. Our generation especially really got left in the dust in terms of how to manage our money, so I've set out to change that in the best way I can. If you want to stick along for the journey, then make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to stay posted. I post weekly videos just like this one, and I have a podcast that comes out on Mondays. I'm having a lot of fun with the podcast, recording just conversations with my friends and other entrepreneurs that I meet from all over, and we really dive deep into their story and what makes them tick in terms of being an entrepreneur. And of course, because I'm a finance coach, we like to talk about personal finance and financial freedom and sort of what that looks like for them. Also, the biggest thing you can do to support the channel is hit that like button. It helps more people see the video, which helps my channel grow and ultimately just helps me make better videos for you guys. Today's video is all about how to master the holy grail when it comes to managing your money, the budget. Let's jump in. Budgeting is a lot like dieting. Just about everyone knows that you'll be better off if you do it, so most of us try it, but very few of us actually end up sticking with it. Why is that? Well, from my experience, that's because there's tons of misconceptions when it comes to what a budget actually is. And that means just like dieting, there are lots of unsustainable practices that get spread around and people fall off quickly. And then they blame the diet, right? It's keto's fault, not mine. And it's the same thing with budgets. So the first thing I want you to do is think about every single adjective that comes to your mind when you think of a budget. You can write them down or just think about them. Go ahead and pause this video and write some of them in the comments. And just go ahead and post ins and see what other people write too. You might think of something like restrictive or tedious or just no fun. If any of your adjectives were along these lines, then you need to attack that negative thinking first. The beautiful thing about budgeting is that you're the only one in control, meaning you get to decide exactly how restrictive or tedious it actually is. A couple things you want to keep in mind if you want it to be sustainable is that your budget should be flexible, something that you don't stress a whole lot about, and maybe even fun or motivating to do. Otherwise, it'll just fall into that same category that one diet did that one time. So let's jump into the computer and I'll show you how to make and keep a basic budget. Put these guys on. So now we're in the computer. I use Google Sheets for all of my budgeting just because it's free and accessible. But if you for some reason don't have access to Google Sheets, then you can always use the pen and paper method or Excel if you have that. The process is pretty much the same all around. So let's jump in. Oh, also if you want to follow along, pick a system that you're going to use and open it up and start doing it with me. This is meant to be a sort of step-by-step tutorial. Okay, so let's jump in and let's start by naming it. I'll call this test budget. There's a couple things in the top left that we're going to want to keep track of. First of all, the month. We'll want to know our starting balance. We'll want to know our remaining balance. And we'll want to know what I call our true expense. So the formatting is obviously up to you. It doesn't have to be fancy by any means. I just do sort of simple, and really I just want to make sure that it's functional is the most important. So these are the first things that we want to keep track of, and really the most important thing when it comes to budgeting is keeping track of your expenses for the month. Where is your money going? And there's a couple ways of doing this. A lot of people will say just write out a big list and categorize all of your spending, and boom, that's your monthly spending, call it a day, you're good. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this. I think that our spending falls into three bigger categories. categories. We're either spending our money on a need and a necessity like our rent, our gas, or something we could go without, but a luxury like a want, or money that we don't spend like savings. So I break the expenses up into what I call expense buckets, where you have your needs, your wants, and your savings. One of the big principles about budgeting is you always want to pay yourself first. So I put the savings bucket first, and I can sort of see how much I can afford to put into savings based on how much I'll need for my needs and my wants. So let's make those buckets. I start off by merging 4 cells like this, and we will start paying ourselves first. We'll call this one savings. So a couple things that we want to keep track of here. We want to keep track of obviously what is the category. We want to keep track of the budgeted amount, the actual amount, and we want to keep track of the difference between the two. Give yourself a ton of space here, more space than you think you're going to need, honestly, for the categories. And then at the bottom you put total, or I guess totals. So this right here is the basic spending bucket. You can make it pretty if you want. I usually do something like this. These right here, you're gonna want to make sure, first off, you want to make sure that it's categorized centered. I just like that because it looks better. Currency rounded. That way when you put stuff in here, put numbers in here, it'll turn it right into dollars for you. And now just a couple formulas. So down here, we're gonna want to sum up everything above it. So we go equals sum, open parentheses, and then if you hold control and drag like this, you can grab the range that you want, close parentheses, enter. So you can see that says 0. And then if you grab the little box down here, you'll see the little black plus sign, and then you can drag it over to the right 2 cells, and it'll copy that formula over for you. So now we have the basic spending bucket, and you can see sort of how it works. Now we can take this, Control C to copy, select up here, Control V to paste, here, Control V to paste. So now we have our 3 spending buckets. We can put this as needs, and this one will be wants. Boom, so now we're good to go. You get the point. You'll go ahead and just put in the categories within these 3 buckets, the amount that you're budgeting for at the beginning of the month, and then at the end of the month, we'll go in and put what you actually spend. I like to use Personal Capital and Mint. These both, they hook up to your bank account and track your expenses for you, so you don't have to, and they even attempt to categorize it. So you'll go in and put what your categories are. So for example, let's say you're saving for retirement. Let's say you're saving for your first house, and you put in your amounts there, and you get the point, right? Rent, gas, food, food. Alright, and so then up here there's a couple formulas that you're going to put in. So first off, we're going to format this currency, center it, hold it. I'm a little OCD about these. Boom. Okay. So say your starting balance is something like 5,000, right? You put that in, boom, 5,000. So our remaining, what we want that to do is, as we put in our budgeted amounts, it'll start to subtract out what we're putting in, and the target is to get our remaining down to 0. So that way we know that we've given every dollar that we have available to budget that month, either to spend or to save, we've given every dollar a job, or we put it to work. This way we have a pile of money waiting for our bills, instead of having bills that we wait for money to go ahead and pay. I've had this happen before. I'm sure I'm not alone. I've had to pay my rent on the 5th because I'm waiting for a paycheck. Keeping a budget is the best way to sort of assign the money before the bills come. And so the formula here, we're going to say equals, we're going to take the starting balance, subtract out the sum, holding control of this guy, this guy, and this guy. Boom. Sweet. So you can see that if I go ahead and put money in here, so let's say I put it in 1,000 here, our remaining drops down to 4,000. So at the beginning of the month, you'll go in, you'll budget your amounts, you'll get remaining down to 0, you're good to go. And then at the end of the month, you'll put in your actual, and that'll show you what your expenses actually are. And this is an important number. It's crucial that you know how much around you're spending every month just to keep your life sort of functioning the way it does. That way you can make plans around sustaining it without having to to actively exchange your time for money, right? The concepts behind financial freedom. So your true expenses are the money that you actually spend that month. And so that'll be your actual in the needs and the wants bucket. So we go ahead and hit equals sum, open parentheses, holding control, boom, and boom. So let's say that we spend 600 on rent, 200 on gas, and 150 on food. So you can see it totals up what your actual expenses are. Awesome. So the only thing that we want to add now is a way to keep track of our income for the month. So we'll just write income, merge these two cells. And really you just want to keep track of the source and you want to keep track of the amount. So depending on how many different sources of income you have will be how much space you want to leave here. But at the bottom, you'll just go ahead and put total, and down here, we'll be taking a sum of all of this, like we did up above. Boom, go ahead and format this, centered. I'm doing a Control-Shift-E, by the way, to center these. And now we're good to go. So obviously this is super basic and there are tons of different bells and whistles that you can choose to keep track of if you want. So feel free to customize this if you end up getting a hold of it, or if you're making it on your own, go ahead and add whatever you want. But these are really the bare bone essentials for keeping a budget, and you can definitely get away with just using this. So to recap, basically the way you're using this is at the first of the month you go in and you look in your accounts and you say, okay, how much money do I have to spend and also to save? So what's in my savings, what's in my checking? If you have any investments, that's a savings too. And so you'll total all those up, you'll put it in your starting balance. You go ahead and categorize out all of your expenses, and you can base this off of the history based on the way you spent in the past. And then you'll put in your amounts until you get your remaining down to 0, and then you're done at the beginning of the month. And then at the end of the month, you'll keep track of how much you actually spent. You can make it easier with Mint or Personal Capital. You'll categorize out your income from the different sources. You'll see how they compare, and that's about it. Really, the goal here is just to make sure that you are A, spending less money than you make, and B, making sure you pay yourself first to hit your savings goals. So let's jump out of the computer and wrap things up. So at the end of the day, budgeting is really just a way to make sure the way we spend our money aligns with our priorities. A good example is my best friend, since I met him, has always wanted to be a professional musician, but really hasn't made a whole lot of progress recently on it just because it's sort of overwhelming. Like where do you start? But he knew that the next big thing that he needed was some serious equipment. He needed to set up a studio beyond just the acoustic work he was doing and really put out quality content. And so we sat down and we looked at his budget. We looked at his income and we looked at his expenses. And it turned out all in all, he had like $500-600 left over at the end of every month, which was just sort of going nowhere, not really doing anything for him. And so we hopped on Amazon and we made him a wish list of everything he would need for his studio. We started looking at equipment and we pieced it together. He could get like almost everything that he really needed to start making professional sounding music for under $500-600. And so the next month I get a call from my friend saying, hey man, I did it. I'm setting my studio up right now. Thanks for showing me how to budget. I didn't realize I had the money to do it in just a month, and think about what I can buy next month. So that's the concept behind budgeting that you really want to get behind, is think about what your priorities are, what's most important to you, and attach a dollar amount to it. Whether it's a trip, an experience, equipment for a music studio, everything has its cost. Just figure out what it is. And then all you need to do is look at your budget and find a way to afford it. It's really as simple as that. And once you start seeing budgeting that way, it'll be a lot easier for you to do. One more thing to keep in mind too is that when you're checking your budget on the first of the month, you won't go in any other time in the month except if you have some sort of big windfall, like a lot of money that you weren't expecting to make. For example, $1,200 from the IRS or a loan from the SBA. Since you weren't anticipating that money, money, it's crucial that you go in as soon as you make it and paying yourself first. Put as much as you can afford into a savings account and then pay some bills with it. This is one of the habits that people who are successful with their money keep, because the longer you let that random money you weren't expecting sit in your account, the more likely you are to spend it on something that you weren't really thinking about and therefore doesn't really align with your priorities. And remember that you'll make mistakes. Your actual won't be the same as your budgeted every month. It's natural. Just roll with the punches. Adjust your budget when you need to. Be forgiving with yourself too. Make it fun. There's no reason to be hard on yourself. And if you stop, if you don't do it for a month, it's okay. Just pick it back up. And maybe it's because it was boring. Maybe because you didn't want to do it. So try planning something fun around it on the first. Go out to brunch if you're budgeting with a significant other, or reward yourself with something that you really enjoy right afterwards. And you'll really just need to do this for the first couple of months to ingrain that habit within you, to get past that friction of building a new habit. And then once you've done that, it's sort of becomes second nature. It's almost like riding a bike. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it helped you out. Make sure to go back if you get caught up, or reach out to me personally for some advice. It's literally what I do, is help people with their money, and I absolutely love doing it. So please, you're not a bother. I'd be happy if you sent me a message. If you want to support the channel, please like this video. The algorithm and I would be super happy. If you want to keep seeing my videos like this, then subscribe and hit the bell so you stay posted. I really can't express how much I appreciate you guys for supporting me through all of this. Till next time, peace.